a comprehensive look at trends, fund profiles, and more in Exploring ETFs.
Hi everyone, welcome to Exploring ETFs. I'm Neena Mishra, and today we are talking about Bitcoin ETFs, and there are three now after a long wait. So talking about Bitcoin, Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies are rebounding today after a sharp sell-off last week. These cryptocurrencies had sold off along with other risk assets, mainly due to concerns related to the new deadly variant of the coronavirus. Now they are rebounding today, and in fact, the world's largest cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, had fallen into a bear market briefly last week, which is down more than 20% from its all-time high of 69,000, which was hit earlier this month. Now, Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies too also had rallied earlier in October on anticipation of the launch of the first Bitcoin ETF in the US. And it has been a wait of more than 8 years since the Winklevoss twins had filed for a Bitcoin ETF, and Bitcoin was trading under $100 then, and now it is of course trading close to $57,000 after all that sell-off, and despite all the gyrations, Bitcoin is still up almost 100% year to date. Now we know that investors can easily buy Bitcoin, Ether, and some other cryptocurrencies too on platforms, exchanges like Coinbase, or platforms like Robinhood, PayPal, Venmo, Square. But many investors still wanted an ETF because they didn't want to deal with worry about custody issues, and they wanted to hold Bitcoin in their normal brokerage accounts where they hold other stocks and ETFs, or in their IRAs. So ETFs have made that possible. Now, these ETFs that have been approved, these are futures-based ETFs. Investors would prefer a spot Bitcoin ETF because of the roll costs, and I will talk a little bit about that a little later. But there are roll costs associated with futures-based ETFs and also liquidity issues. But Gary Gensler, SE's chairman, he had expressed preference for a futures-based ETF because unlike Bitcoin, which and other cryptocurrencies which trade on many unregulated platforms, these Bitcoin futures, they trade on regulated exchanges like the CME. And Gensler also would like to have more regulatory clarity on various parts of the crypto ecosystem, which is not very clear as of now. And he has also mentioned that he wants some sort of surveillance agreements with various crypto trading platforms. So that doesn't appear to be very easy. So it seems that a spot Bitcoin ETF may not be coming anytime soon. It may not make sense to a number of investors because physical backed Bitcoin ETFs are trading successfully in Canada. There are many ETPs in Europe and other countries too. And some US ETFs actually hold those Canadian Bitcoin ETFs. But despite all that, it seems that we will have to wait for a spot Bitcoin ETF. So let's take a look at the three futures-based Bitcoin ETFs that exist as of now. So the first Bitcoin ETF, the ProShares Bitcoin Strategy ETF, ticker symbol Bitto, this launched in October, and this has been one of the most successful launches of an ETF ever. This was quickly able to gather over $1 billion in assets because of the pent-up demand, and now has $1.4 billion in assets. It has an expense ratio of 95 basis points, and as I mentioned, all these three ETFs They hold Bitcoin futures, and all three are actively managed. Now, the first two are structured as RIC or registered investment companies, which is the normal structure for most ETFs. Now, if you want to learn more about Bitto, you can go to the code page on Zacks.com. You can read our articles, and using the link on the web page, you can go to ProShares webpage for this ETF, and you will see what it holds. So it basically holds CME Bitcoin futures, which are maturing in December. Then it will hold treasury bills too. Those are for margin requirements. Now, I mentioned roll calls. So I wanted to quickly go to the CME webpage for Bitcoin futures. So you will see that Bitcoin futures that are expiring in December, they are cheaper than the ones that are expiring in January, February, and March. So as we go further out, these become more expensive. So at the end of each month, the ETF manager would have to sell these futures and buy these futures. So when you are selling something which is cheaper and buying something which is expensive, you incur roll costs. And those roll costs could add about 10% to the ETF's expense ratio, the existing fees. So that is why futures-based products are not the best products, but these are the products that are available to investors. Then there's another concern is that there is limit of how much futures contract a single entity can hold. So there are some liquidity concerns too. Now the second ETF that came just a few days after ProShares is by Valkyrie, ticker symbol BTF. This is very, very similar to Bitto, but since it didn't have the first mover advantage that Bitto enjoyed, it is struggling to gather assets and has just 57 million in assets as of now. If you want to learn more about this ETF too, you can go to the code page on Zacks.com, and from there the external homepage, but it would be very, very similar. This also holds futures contracts which are expiring in December. Now, the third one, which made its debut most recently, is by VanEck, XBTF. This is the cheapest, has an expense ratio of 65 basis points, but it is also struggling to gather assets, has just 12 million in assets as of now. So if you're a longer term investor, maybe look at this ETF because of the lower fees. But if you want to trade more frequently, remember this would have a higher bid-ask spread because the size of the ETF is so small and doesn't trade as well as much as Bitto. Now, another difference is that this is structured as a C corporation. Most ETFs use the RIC structure. The C Corp structure, which is usually used by MLP ETFs and others, few others, that results in certain different tax implications. So if you are holding Bitcoin futures ETFs in a taxable account, there would be certain different tax implications between Bitto and XBTF, and you may want to discuss with your tax advisor if you are investing a lot. Thanks for watching. Make sure to check out Zacks.com/promo for an interesting offer, and also make sure to subscribe to our videos, our video channel, so that you do not miss anything. And I will see you next week.